A lot of you have been asking me, which is better, spending 518,000 on a car like this or spending 518,000 on a second-hand car? Before we start the review of the Suzuki S-PRESSO, and there are many out there, I think one of the things we do have to tackle before we get to the car is one of its main competitors. And a lot of you have been asking me, Nix, should I be getting something like the Suzuki S-PRESSO brand new at 518,000 pesos or spend that 518,000 pesos on a second-hand car? So we're here to discuss that before we review the car. So the prices I'm giving, it's all arbitrary, so the values can change. So the top 3 things that I will consider that this has an advantage over getting a second-hand car is this already comes standard with a 7-inch touchscreen display that also has Bluetooth. This has brand new fluids, brand new parts, everything brand new. And this one has a new set of tires. One of the things is most cars from the 2013 range down, they don't have touchscreen compared to this one. This has a 7-inch touchscreen Bluetooth infotainment system already, which if you want to add on an older car, you're probably gonna spend around 10,000 pesos. Secondly, all the consumables, all the fluids, if you want to replace it on the second-hand car just to feel brand new, you're gonna probably want to set aside 60,000 pesos so you can replace all the brake pads, all the fluids, have a checkup if there are any parts to replace, any filters to change, you can change it as well with the 60,000 peso budget. And then lastly, you want to set aside around 12,000 pesos and maybe or a bit more for getting a brand new set of tires versus getting this at 518,000 pesos, you have everything that comes with it. So if you do all the math, your budget for getting a second-hand car, instead of 518,000 pesos, it's shaved down to 436,000 pesos, give or take. The thing is though, all those kilometers driven, they're not yours. And you cannot take into account what happened or the quality of the car taken care of on those, hundreds of thousands of kilometers driven. With that in mind, we will now review the Suzuki S-PRESSO and what it's all about. So, the Suzuki S-PRESSO, when you look at the competitors at its price, it's hard to call it a mini compact because it's a sizable vehicle. Older brother of this car is the Suzuki Alto. And I must say, that's one of my favorite cars of all time because it's a K car. I think the Philippines needs to jump on the bandwagon of owning K cars because for its size, it does so much. And the maintenance is easy as well because the smaller the part, the cheaper they are and the easier they are to replace. You know what? Look at it. Take a look. Looking? Okay. What do you feel? Because when I look at it, it just makes me happy. Look at this grills. It's just so retro looking and yet so modern. But yeah, so going back to the exterior, I really like the ride heights. The other day, we actually went through a flood where some of the cars were actually turning back. But if you look at the video right here, you can see that we went through the flood just fine with a car like this. And the water was around the higher above the ankle. Really impressive car. It's the little car that could. Next, the interior. I guess going inside the car, this is where you're going to have to manage expectations. And it's not that the parts feel cheap. No, in fact, they feel like Suzuki plastic sturdy. Like when you tap on it, when you feel it, you know it's gonna last for a long time. But there are things that might make you reconsider unless you're a really experienced driver. Because for one thing, this has no tachometer. If you're not gonna be able to see the car revving and then knowing when to shift, you really have to depend on audio cues on when to shift the vehicle. And then also, this only comes with a 5-speed manual transmission. So when you put those two things together, getting this car, you have to have some experience in driving not only manual cars, but driving cars in general. Because you're gonna need those audio cues to know when to shift. So this is the driving impression of the Suzuki S-PRESSO. To start off this, this segment, I think it is best to talk about the compromises you have to make. Things you have to consider, because we have to manage expectations, for a car that's worth 518,000 pesos. So I guess the biggest one, and I know a lot of people look into this, is that it doesn't come with an automatic transmission. So if you're not able to drive, manual cars, then this is obviously isn't the car for you. Unless you're willing to learn how to drive manual, then maybe this can be the car you can grow up and learn with. Okay, so another thing to consider is that there's no tachometer. You don't see the revs of your engine. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so the only things you see here on the instrument cluster is speed, fuel, and then like the kilometers you've driven A, B, and then the, you know, the fuel consumption and the range. You also see the range. Like the only cue you have left on changing the transmission is through the sound of the engine. So like what I mean by that, I'm gonna know I have to switch to third gear is if you hear the engine grunting like that. So it's only when you hear that, there's no visual cue. It's only when you hear that, okay, I have to switch to third gear, and then like, you know, so on and so forth, fourth gear, fifth gear, and then also like the going down. So without that, you have to pay close attention to what you're hearing. I also have to say that the manual transmission is a really good transmission. You know, you can really feel the gates. It's light, you know, so like you hold it like an egg and then you let the gates guide you. It's such a good feeling transmission. Here, I'm gonna downshift 1, downshift 2. Easy because of the light clutch, and you can really feel the gates. It's very tactile. And the power delivery, it'll really depend on like how you drive. If you're really familiar with like, you know, changing gears and all, it's a very potent pocket rocket, I must say, because the vehicle's really light. That's one of the highlights of this car. So yeah, it has the DNA of the Suzuki Alto, the simplicity, the, you know, the basic, and yet gives a bit more. And yet it has like the 2020 requirement of like, we need ride height because the roads are getting bad. We need ride height for the practicality. So this is sort of the Alto on stilts, but greatly improved. This drives well. It has a lot of rear space for, you know, for its class, especially when you consider the price. The plastics are good. Like they're plastic, but like they're Suzuki sturdy plastic. You know they're gonna last for quite a long time. Right? And there are a lot of reviews out there. I suggest you watch them also. They cover a lot of bases. This is one of the many. The viewpoint I want to put out there, besides the review, is like how this car fares versus like getting a second-hand car. And yeah, just like I said a while ago, getting a second-hand car, you know, you can get a bigger car for like the same amount, like subcompact size, but you're missing out on, you know, the ride height. And also, it's like when you get a second-hand car, like there's that big factor of high risk, high reward. And for some, especially the ones who are experienced in buying cars or who know what to look for, that might be the path they'll take. But for those who are like new to cars or who want to buy a brand new car, because let's face it, the risk of getting a second-hand car, you don't know the history. Unless like you're buying it from a friend you can trust or something. But other than that, it's really difficult. That's what makes a Suzuki S-PRESSO such like a good buy. For 518,000 pesos, you're getting a practical car. You're getting a capable car. And you're getting it brand new, so you don't have to worry about those things. And then you also have the warranties that come with it. So like when you do the math, it kind of balances out. As long as you know what you want and need, then you can decide, yeah, there's second-hand cars. But yeah, there's also fantastic cars like the Suzuki S-PRESSO. At the very, very least, this has to be one of your big considerations if that's like your price range.